Welcome to this explainer. Certain true crime monikers just instantly dominate our cultural memory. You hear a name, and literally immediately, the media frenzy, the wild theories, the cryptic letters, it all comes rushing back. Our source material today starts with one of the absolute most infamous labels of all time. But we're actually going to use this incredible fame to examine a profound contrast. Because while some cases capture a nation's undivided attention and endless resources, others that are equally terrifying, are just left entirely in the shadows. Today, we're looking at the stark reality of a forgotten terror from Washington, D.C., a deeply tragic unsolved case known as the Freeway Phantom.
Zodiac. Just that single word carries this bizarre, almost cinematic mystique, doesn't it? Media and law enforcement often inadvertently elevate certain criminals with these grand titles that completely capture the public's imagination and dominate the headlines. But behind every single sensationalized moniker is a grim reality. And so often, the actual victims are completely overshadowed by the enduring fame of the perpetrator. So let's shift our focus away from the highly publicized and dive into a truly harrowing reality that unfolded between April 1971 and September 1972. In the Washington, D.C. area, 6 young black girls, ranging in age from just 10 to 18 years old, disappeared under strikingly similar, absolutely terrifying circumstances. Killer. Now, that brutal word strips away any of that true crime mystique, doesn't it? We're looking at a highly organized, deeply disturbing pattern of violence here. Each victim was abducted and held captive, sometimes for several agonizing days before being murdered. And the perpetrator's signature? It was deliberately placing their bodies near major highways surrounding the city. They were always found within a short distance of one another. To put that into perspective, the very first victim, Carol Spinks, simply vanished while walking home from a convenience store. Her body was discovered days later right along the shoulder of Interstate 295. It was a horrifying reality, and it spread immense fear throughout the city's black communities in particular. And this stands in really sharp contrast to the catchy headlines of other infamous, highly resourced cases. Zodiac, on the one hand, killer, on the other. This stark contrast perfectly highlights a deeply troubling aspect of how these cases are historically handled. On one side, you have investigations fueled by massive funding, endless media cycles, and intense public pressure. But on the other, you have the tragic reality of the Freeway Phantom case. Despite forming an initial task force, the source material notes that meaningful progress stalled incredibly quickly. The investigation just languished. No significant leads were aggressively pursued for years, and according to historical reviews and case files, there were strong allegations that law enforcement's slower response and lack of sustained attention were directly tied to the racial demographics of the victims. It's a really sobering comparison of exactly how resources and public attention were divided during that era. Step 1, Zodiac. Step 2, Killer. You see, the terror of these crimes wasn't just in the abductions themselves. It was in the calculated escalation and the psychological torment inflicted on the families. It was a methodical, step-by-step progression of cruelty. In one of the most chilling details of the entire investigation, following the abduction of Brenda Crockett, her family actually received a phone call. A man on the other end calmly claimed to be holding her captive. He described specific, intimate details about Brenda that only the true kidnapper could have possibly known. He was actively taunting the grieving family in real time before just abruptly hanging up. Investigators strongly believe this was the killer himself, demonstrating a level of brazen confidence and sheer cruelty that's hard to even wrap your head around. Zodiac. Killer. Decades have passed now, and what remains is a profound void of justice. The investigation was plagued by a complete lack of concrete, physical evidence to anchor the case. Over the years, several suspects were brought in and scrutinized. One notable suspect was a man named Robert Askins. He was actually already incarcerated for an unrelated murder from way back in 1938. Investigators looked closely at Askins because his behavior and location perfectly matched the time frame of the Freeway Phantom murders. However, despite their heavy suspicions, they were never able to conclusively connect him to the crimes through any physical evidence before he passed away in 1985. So this lack of definitive proof left investigators with agonizingly few avenues to pursue. Zodiac Killer. Today, the effort to finally put a definitive, permanent name to this unknown individual continues. Cold case investigators are refusing to let the story end in silence. They're now turning to advanced forensic genealogy techniques, attempting to re-examine old, preserved evidence with modern science. The goal? To finally enclose this mystery, to firmly identify a phantom and to close the loop on a tragedy that has haunted the capital for over half a century. It's a desperate, ongoing search to bring a measure of finality to a case that has remained open for far, far too long. Zodiac killer, but the reality we are left with today is just devastating. As of right now, no arrest has ever been made and no person has ever been formally charged in connection with the murders of Carol Spinks, Darlenia Johnson, Brenda Crockett, Nino Moshe Yates, Brenda Woodard, and Diane Williams. The Freeway Phantom remains entirely unidentified. The source material presents this case as a tragic example of how systemic neglect in earlier decades of law enforcement may have allowed a serial killer to escape justice entirely. And it leaves us with a heavy, enduring question to ponder. When institutional biases allow a predator to slip away into the shadows, leaving 6 families endlessly searching for answers 50 years later, who truly pays the price for those we forget?